Medfield, welcome to the newest edition of Happenings at the Medfield Town Hall. I guess today, I think everybody knows by now, is Mike Sullivan, who's been here how long?
42 years, pushing 43.
Oh my God, amazing. And he still puts up with us, and the town still puts up with him, which is really a miracle.
That's much more questionable, that why they put up with me for so long.
Mike is going to talk about a couple of different projects. So the road paving, of course, is a big one. The Veterans Administration, the director, Veterans Director, whatever you call him, is another question. The tax rate is another question. So
there's
your choice. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start with things that affect the opening of school, I guess, would probably be the best, since that seems to be the big topic. We tried to get the paving done before school opened, and we succeeded. The only thing we didn't get was the stripes painted, but that's supposed to be done tonight, so we're only a day late and $1 short.
That's not bad.
No, I thought it went very smoothly, considering, what it was 109 plus North Street plus 27 that all were disrupted. And I think the idea of working nights that Mo Goulet had was very smart.
I do too.
I think it's one of the first times we've done it that way. I'm trying to think if there are any others. But we did get, one complaint I think we had about keeping people awake, because I guess the vibratory compactor was fairly loud. But compared to doing it in the daytime with all that traffic, it would have been chaos. It would have taken probably months to get
I've gotten
done.
very positive comments on that. I don't know how you people at home feel about it, but very, very positive, especially in line with the comparison with the work in Medway on 109 and how fast it went here.
Poor
People
Medway,
are very, very pleased with it.
Yeah, I think it was remarkable, and hopefully it will last 10 years so we can get on the state list for getting 109 paved by the state, which should be. I mean, they paid for Millis, they paid for Westwood, they paid for Medway, so there's no reason they shouldn't pay for Medfield. But under the new system they have, it takes 5 to 10 years to get on the list to be funded. So
we're on the list, huh?
We think this new type of pavement they put down, it's a heavier duty pavement, and hopefully it will stand up to the truck traffic on 109. Using the vibratory compactor too, they got more compaction than if they had just done it with the regular rollers, and they went over it several times with the compactor. So that should last, and hopefully in the interim we'll be able to figure out how to get sidewalks on Main Street.
I would love to have sidewalk. I pushed for those all the times I was a selectman.
Yes.
All the way on the library side of the street, all the way up to Shaw's.
It is a difficult problem. People, they think you just throw some curbing down and put asphalt or concrete down, and it's a big drainage issue in that area.
I remember that stopped us before, but it's still a good idea if we can do it.
Yes.
It's not one I'd use it, but I think a lot of people would.
It's one that's going to be very expensive, and probably when that happens, we'll be like Medway. It'll take a lot longer. So get ready. But as I said, it'll probably be 5 to 10 years before that we get to that. In the meantime, we did get another project on which the selectmen have been quite anxious to get finished, and that's the sidewalk on Metacomet Street, which will connect the Metacomet Playground parking lot with the high school. So a lot of kids use that mornings and
sure do.
And afternoons, and it'll be a lot safer for them. And they did a nice job. They put in a beautiful stone wall. The highway department really is a good group, and they put in granite curbing, and then they did that cement, the sidewalk and cement. So
especially good to have it done before the football and soccer seasons come, and all kinds of family people coming to watch, and all kinds of fans coming to watch. It's going to be great to have that other parking available with the sidewalk access.
Plus, we don't want all those cleats sticking in the cement and messing it
right.
up. So.
That would not be a good thing.
No. It's funny, it was interesting, the night we started the paving was the night of the last concert at the gazebo.
Oh.
And the concerts ended about 7 o'clock.
Oh my gosh.
The paving, the grind, this was the week they did the grinding of the roads. And they were starting down the other end. They started down at, because of the concerts, they started down at the railroad tracks and went the other way. But as a result, and we also had a woman that came down from Concord that wanted to circulate a petition to for a 28th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution that would should limit campaign finance spending.
Locally or?
Nationally. This would be an
I
amendment to
kind
the
of like
U.S.
that.
Constitution. I do too. So, but at 7, the concert was just finishing up. The grinding was just started, and she was talking to someone and passed out. So all of a sudden,
Jeez.
we were trying to handle the traffic because 109 had been closed down, and we had to divert the traffic off 109. We had the people leaving the concert, and we had 2 ambulances and 3 police cruisers in the parking lot behind Brothers. So it was chaos, but everything worked out all right. And
the person was
good
all right?
news, she's fine. She called the next day to thank everybody for the care she got, and she's okay.
Well, it's a good thing if you're going to pass out to do it in some place so public. So there's always somebody around to give you a hand. That's great.
Or such, within about 30 seconds, there was EMTs and policemen running over to take care of her.
Great service, yep.
So it really was a remarkable, considering what they were dealing with. So as I said, school started, and the kids go Wednesday and Thursday, have Friday off. I guess the teachers started on Monday. So they had Monday and Tuesday. The kids came in Thursday and Friday, and the schools are closed Wednesday and Thursday, and the schools are closed on Friday, and next Monday, of course, Labor Day.
Open again Tuesday.
So, and hopefully if it's a mild winter, and if the Farmer's Almanac is wrong, we should be okay next June on the kids getting out. So what else is going on in town? Oh, well, the tax rate. A lot of people are interested in the tax rate.
That's the questions I got were taxes. Everybody wants the taxes to go down.
Yes. What did they say about death and taxes?
I know. They want what they want, but they don't want to pay for it. So they want lower taxes.
Yeah, in that regard, I don't blame them. Sometimes I feel the same. A lot of times
too.
I feel the same way. But on the other hand, unlike the federal government, we have to pay our bills. We have to balance the budget every year, and so if we could fake it like those guys in Washington do and just run up a tab and leave it to the next generation, we'd be heroes, I guess.
Sometime we should make you run for a federal office as congressman.
What did I ever do to you?
I think it would be kind of fun to see you there for a couple of years, see what you came up with.
I'd be getting stoned after about 2 speeches on the stump, and I told people I wanted to cut their spending and raise their taxes. But in the long run, they need to hear the truth. They need to hear if you want it, you got to pay for it. And unfortunately, we've got a bunch of people that tell you can have it, you don't have to pay for it. You just borrow the money. And anybody that's had trouble with credit cards knows the problem with that theory. And America's been on a credit card binge for a few decades now.
I hate credit cards.
Yeah, I do, and I hate.
We didn't use them when we were first married. Our budget was so tight that our rule was if we couldn't pay cash for it, we didn't buy it.
Yeah.
And it really was a good rule.
Yeah.
It really was.
Yeah. Because other than that, 2 or 3 months later, you're really in a pickle because you not only can't afford it, but now you've got interest you got to pay, so you can afford less.
Yeah.
So the tax rate, we were able to reduce the budget so that we didn't have to have an operating override this year. So this has been about the 5th year. I know people think we have overrides every year, but I think it's about the 5th year we haven't had an operating override. We did have a $1 million affordable housing override. We haven't borrowed that money yet, depending on what developments, affordable housing develops we come up with. We may or may not need that money, but there's been an affordable housing trust committee appointed. I believe you were on it.
I'm on it, yep.
So And so you can decide how best to use or not use that money. And our debt is in pretty good shape now compared to where we were 20 years ago when we were in the middle of all the school construction. We're down this year to about 50 million in principal and about, I think, 16 million roughly in interest, so about 66 million. 20 years ago, when the tax bills were a lot smaller, we owed $93 million in principal and interest. So we are in better shape. Now we do have a potential school project coming along.
I heard that, yes.
Hoping, they tell me that it's probably going to be 3 or 4 years away, which would be good because in fiscal 2020, which is only a couple years away, in fact we're budgeting for starting to prepare the budgets for fiscal 19 now, and we're already in fiscal 18. So in 2 years, we start paying off the debt on the 3 school renovation projects when we did the memorial, the middle school, and the high school. And that will come off in 2021 and 22.
Yeah, that will help a lot.
Plus 2 or 3 of the sewer projects come off then.
Oh, okay. Good to know that.
So it won't be as big a savings in taxes as you might think, because about half of the school debt is paid for out of that $18 million that we receive from school building assistance. We spread it out over the remaining life of the bonds. But still, it'll be about $600,000 off. And that money, having been voted as an override, when that debt is paid off, it doesn't free up $600,000 to spend. It has to be used to reduce the taxes. It has to be applied. Here we go. One of those people.
Somebody's got a question for you.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
Do you remember when we used to do that at selectmen's meetings? I'm going back years ago. We had a 10 or 15 minute period in the beginning. We called it Tele-Selectmen.
Yes.
And anybody could call and ask in the first opening minutes before we go on to our agenda items. It's kind of a good idea,
Yes.
I thought.
We got very few calls.
I know we did, but at least people had that option
Yeah,
if
yeah.
they wanted to ask a question.
Today you might get more calls with the era of the radio talk shows.
That's right.
But the, I also remember when I first got my cell phone, I was sitting in a selectmen's meeting and I wasn't used to it. And this phone went off and I'm getting very annoyed at whose phone is that going off? And they were looking all over and then I realized it was my
Right
phone
there in
that
your
was
pocket.
going off. So talk about egg on my face. So. Okay, so the taxes, well, it looks like taxes, the tax rate, my guess, and it's a guess because it's actually the assessors that are the ones that finally determine it, but it'll be around 2.5%. Now, as you know, we have to revalue every year. The state makes us revalue every single year. So depending on how you do on the reval, your taxes could go up a little bit more than 2.5%, or it could go up a little bit less than 2.5%. If your value of your house goes up faster than the rest of the town, your taxes will go up a little bit faster, and if it goes up, value of your house goes up a little bit less, your tax bill will go up a little bit less than 2.5. And that we have no way of knowing until the assessors come out with their reval. So, and 2.5 is about what Proposition 2.5 allows, so I think we've done pretty well for the year overall. Considering some of the big expenses, we have health insurance went up 5.5%, the rates on that, and
Is that typical across the nation?
it's low.
Oh, it's
A
low.
lot of them are going up much higher, yeah. I've heard even around this area, some of them are going up 10, 12%.
Oh my God.
So we've had good claims experience, so we benefited from that, and hopefully our claims experience will stay, and we'll all stay healthy and healthy, wealthy, and wise. So, or at least healthy and wise.
Or maybe not even wise sometimes.
Yes. So about 2.5% would be my guesstimate on that. And I've already started on the fiscal 19 But in addition, the major cost drivers are your health insurance, your pensions. Your pension, Norfolk County pension, they've told us is going up 10% a year for the next 5 years.
Geez.
And I think this is the second year, so we got 3 more years of 10% increases. And that's already over $2 million.
Wow.
Now, the teachers' retirement system is all paid for by the state.
Mm-hmm. But we pay for that anyway, just a different way.
You pay for it a different way, and I saw the figures on that a couple of years ago. It was like $5.5 million a few years ago, so I imagine it's much higher than that now. But, and then the school budget was up over $1 million, and we only get about $1.4 million in new revenues, so between those things, that eats most of it up. Mm-hmm. So we've been lucky that some of the other budgets were level funded or actually decreased a bit. I think some of the consolidations we made are starting to pay off. I'm very happy with both the two new department heads we have, Mo Goulet, the public works director. I'm very impressed by him. And Jerry McCarty, the new facilities manager. And many of you have seen the new roof on the gazebo, which people are asking for years when that's going to be done. And he is about to get going on repairing the roof at Town Hall, which a lot of people have been asking about. So,
how are we doing for a new fire chief?
They have hired an interim chief. He's the chief of Hull. He's retired. And they're going out, they're going to hire a firm to help them, like we did on the police chief, to help them
so there won't be a local committee?
Candidate. It'll be a local committee. They'll probably have a fire chief on it, like we had what the chief of Westwood was on.
Right.
So it'll be mostly a local committee, and then we'll have a consultant from this firm that works with the committee. So one of the things that's sort of slowed it down a bit is the whole discussion about ALS.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a major
absolutely
factor in what happens to the fire department in terms of staffing, in terms of budget, in terms of service levels.
Absolutely.
So, and there's no easy answers. It's one of those, you're caught between a rock and a hard pad.
Yeah. Now people ask my opinion all the time because I was an EMT for so long.
Yeah.
But it's still not an easy thing to say yes or no to.
I get very aggravated with the whole thing because we had a good service 10, 12 years ago provided by the hospitals. And then some of the local communities decided, their fire departments decided that they wanted to have local in-house ALS service. So it took away over half the business from the hospitals. So the hospitals did away with the ALS service and left the smaller towns in the lurch. We were able to get by for about 10 years with private service, but they weren't making enough money, so they dropped out of the business.
And you can't blame them either.
No, and the ideal way to do it would be some sort of regional, because you need enough of a caseload, A, to pay for the staffing requirements, and B, to keep them trained. They have to have 40 hours a year training, and can't be driving the vehicle. It has to be in the cab,
correct,
providing patient care, and that's hard when you only have maybe 100 cases a year, so if that. So, and probably they're talking about adding 6 to 8 people for coverage, in addition to the existing 8 people we have in the fire department plus the chief. So it's tough. It's one of those decisions that there are no right answers.
Of course.
And I'm glad I'm not on that committee. It's going to be a tough one.
No, it is a tough one.
No matter what they do, they're going to be criticized. So.
Yeah.
But fortunately, it is a good committee. There's Gus Murby is chairman of it, and they've got varied opinions on the committee, to say the least.
Well, that's a good thing, though.
Yes, that is
the best thing on a town board is to have a difference of opinion. It would be a very badly run town if the selectmen agreed on everything, if the warrant committee agreed on everything.
Yes, yeah.
Which, in my years on the warrant committee, we never agreed on everything, and I think it was great.
As long as you can fight it out and still speak to each other at the end of the meeting.
As you would probably remember, we had a really, really great warrant committee back then. I don't think we ever had a fight. We had a lot of teasing, a lot of jokes, a lot of "I'll get you next time," but there was never a nastiness at all. In all the years I was on the warrant committee, I did 2 terms there, and I loved it.
It was a good group of people.
It
Over the
was.
years, we've been very lucky. We've had a good group of people. For the most part, I can only think of just a handful of people that didn't work out well.
Right.
Usually they recognized it and didn't stay on. So it's a time-consuming process,
It was.
but you learn a lot about your town. You meet a lot of people. So one thing I've heard people say about the warrant committee is they've got to meet a lot of people they never would have met otherwise. So,
Absolutely.
um,
It was help for me when I went on it because I'd written for the local newspaper before.
yeah.
Before, that was my first thing, and then I was on the library board, so I had an idea of how boards ran.
Yeah.
But then the warrant committee showed me a whole different look of everybody. It was very, very interesting.
And the other advantage of being on the warrant committee is you get the padded seats at town meetings, so it's much more comfortable than those cold, hard metal seats that the
And they are tough.
town meeting members have to sit on for
They are
hours
tough.
on that. So,
Yep.
yeah. Okay, so what else is going on in town?
The veterans agent.
Oh, veterans agent. We're going in a couple of different directions. We've had three or four applicants now. Some of them are looking for part-time. We've also been contacted by one of our neighboring towns that has a veterans agent leaving, so we're looking whether
Westwood is what I
we
heard.
could, you're not supposed to tell.
Oh, okay. I heard, somebody told me Westwood.
Well, it's one of the nearby towns, put it that way. So,
Okay.
and they have a similar situation with a veterans agent leaving, so that's another possibility of consolidating with the two towns. And so we'll see, but it's much more encouraging than it was a few months ago. We have a couple of local candidates who have, I think, good qualifications that would work out too, but that would be part-time.
And the number of veterans has to be going down.
Yes, it is. I think the Ron Griffin mentioned that at town meeting, that the number of veterans has been going down, and I think he expects it to continue going down.
I would think so. That's why I wondered about a full-time agent.
Yes, and part of it is that the veterans that are eligible for a lot of the programs are income guidelines. And with the cost of housing in Medfield, it's difficult for people to move to Medfield unless you have a pretty good salary. And if you have a pretty good salary, you'll probably not be eligible for some of the programs. Of course, there are a lot of other services the veterans agent provides besides the what they call Chapter 115, which is the Veterans Service chapter. There's the Valor Act. There's where they give a $1,000 bonus to servicemen who have completed their service and coming out of the service. There's a lot of things in terms of eligibility for other state and federal veterans programs, information on housing. You know, there are some preferences given to veterans in housing. You've got sometimes people need to get their discharge papers sorted out. They either misplaced them 25 years ago and they need to be rescued. And of course, I understand there was a fire at some place in St. Louis 20 years ago, and a lot of the records got burned. So that can be difficult. And then when someone is deceased, they're entitled to a plaque on their tombstone, and that has to be arranged through the federal government to get the plaque, correct wording on the plaque, and get it delivered and installed. So, and putting out the flags, running helping run the Memorial Day parade, the Veterans Breakfast. That's been a new feature added in the last couple of years. So there's a lot more than just the typical what we think of as the Veterans Services program. So, and Ron did a terrific job. He really did.
He did a good job, no question.
Yeah. But it's interesting now, you know, we have a lot of vacant positions in the town right now.
What do you have vacant
They're
now?
hard to find. Well, we have The outreach worker for the Council on Aging is leaving.
And
She's
Cheryl,
terrific,
she's done a
yes.
very nice job, too.
Yes, she
She'll do
has.
well in Framingham. I wish her all the best.
Yes, yeah.
We will miss her.
We have a position in the water department and a position in the sewer department that are vacant.
Wow.
Our treatment plant. I understand we're going to have a position in our library department that's going to be coming up that will be vacant in the near future.
Mhm.
And there's a couple of others. Well, we have the veterans agent.
Yeah.
You know, the unemployment figure is very low now, and it's tough to get people, find people. When the unemployment figures are very high, it's much easier to find people. But
Yes, it would be.
yeah.
But the town administrator's position isn't empty yet?
I'm shy, but I'm not retiring.
You're not retiring.
Not yet, but it won't be long.
Did you tell them about Mr. Carroll?
John Carroll, his title, I believe, is general manager down in Norwood, and he's been there almost as long as I have. He's been there, I think, around 39 years. And he's retiring December 1st,
At age?
89. He'll be 90 in February. So
Wow. And he's a nice man.
he is a very nice man, yeah, yeah. And a outstanding father. He has 18 children.
I remember talking to him, because my mother's maiden name was Carroll.
Oh,
And
yes,
I talked to him at one point when I met him. I said, "Oh, we're probably related." And he said, "With all the kids your grandmother had and I had," he said, "maybe we are."
Probably, yes, yeah. What do they say? What's that program they have on PBS? If you go back far enough, you're related to everybody
Oh, that's,
anyways.
yeah, that's right.
And then you've had your blood work done, haven't you, to determine your
DNA.
ancestry?
Yep,
DNA? Yeah.
DNA. And I'm just
DNA.
as Irish as my grandparents told us we were.
You were, okay.
We have one
okay.
Welsh great-grandmother.
Okay.
And other than that, it's Ireland.
So somebody in your family welched on the Irish
Welsh,
connection?
you made a pun?
Yes.
Oh,
Oh,
that was
gee,
bad.
did I?
That was bad.
It was bad, yeah.
My grandfather told me he thought they met on the boat coming over. I mean, how do we know?
Yes. Well, there were a lot of the Irish are known for their embellishments on their stories,
No question.
and I suppose the later in the night it got, the more embellishments there were. So who knows what the truth is? But it's more fun sometimes to make up stories anyway.
No,
So,
I've always wished that I really knew the stories, the real stories, what they went through when they came over. Because as far as I know, our family had no money when they came over from Ireland. I don't know about your family, but how did they do it? How did they make their way? How strange, how hard was it? Must have been very hard. But at least,
Oh,
as my
sure it
grandfather
was, yes,
said,
yeah.
at least they spoke the same language.
yes. Yeah.
So that was the big asset they
Yeah.
had.
And the cities, while they were big, are not as huge as they are now. I
Well, I'm
mean,
sure they weren't, yeah.
when I look at Houston, I'd never realized, they said Houston now the 4th largest city in the United States.
Just when they talked about the floods in the street being up over to the top of the street signs. I'm trying to
Yes,
picture
yeah.
that going down Main Street. Can you imagine that with everything water, but just seeing the top of the street signs?
Just water, yeah.
Holy
I remember
maze.
one time when we had the blizzard of '78 or whatever it was, the snow piles were up to the top of the street
That I
signs.
remember, but water would be
But
worse.
that was because they pushed it out of the street.
Sure.
The streets were level.
But
to
you think
have
of how
whole
dirty the
thing-
water has to be, how full of all kinds of things you don't
And the
want to.
problem is they expect it to keep rising for another week or two because it doesn't automatically start going down when the rain stops. Yeah, you've got all that water coming from upstream that has to be absorbed and passed through the system. So
I did donate to Kurt Schilling, who's going down, I believe, tomorrow with
Oh,
a
yes,
truckload
yeah.
of stuff. And my daughter Barbara did donate it as well, and I'm sure a lot of other people have. But
yeah,
that's all we can
Yeah.
do. There isn't really anything else we can do.
that's right. Yes, yeah, and you hope that the right stuff gets to the right people.
I
You know,
hope
you
so,
always
too.
hear these horror stories about materials being thrown away because they didn't know where to deliver them
Mm-hmm.
to, or people setting up phony online scams for sending them money and then absconding with
Absolutely.
the funds. You know, so I guess they did list a certain number of organizations that were reliable, like the Red Cross and Salvation Army and things like that. So those are probably the best ones, if particularly for money. Now, clothing and things like that, I think that probably it's easier to deal with smaller organizations.
When they said on the news one of the worst parts of the flood was there's so much impervious surfaces down there. The
Yes.
property's already built up, all the rooftops, roads, sidewalks, everything, and there was no place to, so that made me feel really good that we bought so much land in Medfield. So we still have a lot of vacant land that I would assume would stop any kind of flooding that would ever come.
Well, I remember talking to a person that grew up in New England and one town was teaching in New Orleans, and she said, people in New England can't understand what flooding is like. She said, because you've got hills and valleys and pockets of, you know, of lowlands. And she said, but in New Orleans or Louisiana, you'll have whole counties where the change in elevation is only a foot or two.
I know.
So when you get a flood, the entire county's underwater.
It's hard to picture it. And I'm glad I can't picture it, actually.
I know, plus, you know, it can be muggy and hot. And if you've got no air conditioning and no electricity, I mean, I don't know how people are coping with it. You know, although will say, and maybe they learned the lesson from Katrina, but people seem to be dealing with it much better in Dallas. They seem to say, okay, this is a horrible thing, but let's put our heads together and see how we can get going and get back to normal, even if it takes years. So,
I hope they do.
yeah.
But one woman on the radio said the worst part of it all, when she was asked, was her husband's ashes. She said she missed everything in her house, but it's her husband's ashes that were gone.
Oh, yeah.
And she said that's what she missed the most. And that was sad.
That would be, yeah. Well, she'll always remember how they went.
Out to sea, probably. Yeah. But it's still.
But you know, it kind of reminds me, do you remember a few years ago when, I don't know, was it Sandy or one of the other hurricanes? It wasn't so bad when it hit the Connecticut coast, and then it really exploded when it got up into Vermont. And Vermont had a terrible time. They had bridges and roads ripped apart and flooding all over the place. And it was in the fall, so winter was coming on, and those people got down to business and all got together and rebuilt everything, and within a year or a year and a half, everything was back to normal.
But again, they had ups and downs too in Vermont. It wasn't just flat.
Yes, and Vermont is much smaller. They didn't have the big cities. But I think sometimes it's the initiative of the people and their willingness to pitch in and get things done. So, and it sounds like the Texans are pretty ambitious and will not let things sit untended to. So.
I really hope they do well. I really do. I think we all do.
Yes, yeah, they certainly do. And I guess, well, we probably should get back to Medfield and see what else is going on.
Medfield Day is coming up.
Medfield Day is coming up.
And I'm going to have my usual booth on Medfield Day.
There we go, yes.
With the scarves. If people out there, there's a free scarf with your donation to the Medfield, to the American Cancer Society, excuse me, to the American Cancer Society. We have scarves and we have hats and we have some shawls. So I hope people will come. They can write a check out right to the Cancer Society and get a tax write-off, or they can just come. Our booth will be on North Street right near the head of the pond. So, and Medfield Day is a dynamite time.
It is, yeah. I just signed up today to man the ticket booth in the kiddie area for 2 hours.
Oh, are you?
Oh, I've been doing that for years. So.
Yep.
And then at the end of the day, I go down and help Hank and the crew clean. You know.
You go down what?
Go down at the end of the day and help them take the stuff down. They have a storage area down in that storage bins down off North Meadows Road on the way to the dump.
I didn't know they kept this stuff there. That's good.
Yeah. So it's a.
So who takes it by truck down there then?
Well, there's Hank, and there's a few other people. His loyal assistant, Mr. Keating, is there every year, and he helps out. And there's a group of about 10, 12 people that go down and help out. So
Medfield does a very good job running that Medfield Day.
Yeah, and I always say, my God, I'm 71, I'm doing this, and then I look at Hank. I think Hank has got a few years on me.
Hank is absolutely fantastic. He's done this for so long and so well.
I always tell Hank he's the biggest kid in town. Especially when they turn on those Christmas lights down in Baxter Park.
And he loves it.
Yeah. I don't know what the town's going to do when he can't do it anymore
He's
because
never going to stop, I hope.
I hope not, but
Maybe he'll stop when you do. How about that? Make a deal.
Well,
You
yeah.
and Hank make a deal together.
Well,
You and Pete Carroll, you can all stay together.
we'll see. But yeah, Medfield Day is coming up. The movie. A lot of people want to know what's going on
Oh,
with
it's
that.
almost over, isn't it?
They're going to finish filming this week. They hope to be out, cleaned out, and out of town by the 15th of September.
It's the middle of the month. Day before Medfield Day, then.
Could
Perfect
be,
timing.
yes.
Medfield Day's the
Yes,
16th.
yeah. So they've, what I understand, they're very happy with the way it turned out. They were able to film there quietly. They weren't interrupted very much. They didn't have people trying to break in.
Local
on the set.
restaurants do well?
I think so. I think they had their own catering tent.
Oh,
So,
okay.
but I assume there were other meals that they had catered
good. I
in
hope so.
business meetings and that, yeah. And then sometimes, it's like some of the landscaping companies will do well if they need trees or grass or shrubs or whatever. Shutter Island, there was a lot of that. And I really have been following it. Chris, my assistant, has been working with the committee on it. John Thompson's been very active in the police chief
certainly has been.
and Mo, and they're thrilled with the attitude of the town, the willingness of the town to A, leave them alone when they want to be left alone, and B, help them if they need help. So,
I can't wait to see the movie when it comes out.
well, I have a feeling if you like to sit with a bunch of sub-teens, you might like it. So
It'll
I
come
think
out in a DVD at some point.
it's based on the comic book, so I assume it's geared towards a few years younger than us. So
You think there are people younger than I am, huh?
just a few. So,
Just a few, including you.
so yeah, probably if you play it on a DVD and turn the volume down. Usually those movies I found are quite loud. So, but it will be fun to see.
It should be fun.
The clock, the clock tower at the hospital and some of the other, to try to pick out sites that you can identify.
Yeah, that's what I did with the last movie. It was great.
Yeah, yeah. Although it was hard last time. It was hard to pick out. They changed it around so much.
But
you
I was so
couldn't tell.
familiar with the layout at the hospital because I
At the
volunteered
hospital,
up
yeah.
there for so long.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
true,
easy.
yeah.
And then they let the selectmen walk and look at that. Well, it was still
Oh, yeah.
set up for the movie.
Yeah, yeah.
So it amazed me. Entrances that weren't there before were never really there, or it looked like they were there, and fake trees and fake grass and fake everything. It was
I know, it's
marvelous.
amazing. In the cafeteria, I only went up once. I went up with the building inspector one day. I didn't bother going anymore because it really is not my thing, I guess. And I knew they didn't want us up there, so I didn't want to bother them. But they were telling us they were, and this was before they started filming. This was when they were doing the prep work. And in the old cafeteria, which you're familiar with,
Sure.
they were using that as they had built the entrance to a coal mine,
Yeah, it was, yeah.
and they were using it for an operating room and also as a cafeteria. So that one area they were getting 3 sites out of. So that's why I think they like the hospital. There's
Yeah.
a lot of different buildings they can use.
But they built a fake entrance on the west side of the building, which
They
you
did,
never would have known.
yes,
If you didn't
yes.
know the property, you would never known it
Yes.
was fake.
And they built these big old fountains
And the rock wall.
in the rock wall, yeah. But for this movie, they had these big fountains, and they look very solid, and they're really styrofoam.
Oh, geez.
And they had to build 2 of them because one of the scenes, you're looking into the building across the fountain, and the other one you're in the building looking out. So they had to have a fountain for each side because they were different buildings. So. It's remarkable what they can do. I often thought if they could apply some of those same techniques to, renovating buildings permanently or building housing or whatnot, how much we could get done. but they have unlimited resources, and they can spend, if they need something 2 days from now, they'll get it done.
They'll do it.
Where we have to wait a year to go to town meeting, and then sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Yeah.
And
It is amazing though what they did. I was still surprised.
yes, yeah, yeah. There is, I think we have to watch out. There's a lot of work being done on the railroad tracks, and I understand by the end of next year, the MBTA is talking about running passenger rail service from Boston to Foxborough. Now, that won't affect us because it comes out on the Franklin branch and turns south in Walpole and goes on a different branch to Foxborough. However, I did get a copy of a freight report, state freight report, and they talked about different lines in the state, and one of the lines they thought had potential for return on investment, I think was the term they used, or something like that, was this line through Medfield. And they've been rebuilding the track in Medfield. They've been redoing replacing the ties, redoing the ballast, and putting in welded rail. And their hope is, I think, to get the train speed up to 30 miles an hour. Right now, there's a 10-mile-an-hour limitation.
That's pretty tough when it goes right through the center of a town.
It will, and you know, before they could do anything, I think we have 7 grade crossings in town, and some of them have been redone, like Main Street and Hospital Road, but you got ones like Cottage Street and West Mill Street and some of the others. Yeah. They'd have to really upgrade those before they could do it, but I'm more concerned about freight trains using that line than I am about passenger rail, because I don't think it's a very popular route, you know, to go from Worcester to Foxborough, unless something happens at Foxborough where there's a lot of development around the stadium, which there could be, because you remember Kraft group brought up all that land in anticipation of the casino, and when that got shut down, they have all that land they have to figure out what to do with. So it remains to be seen what they end up doing with that, whether it's apartments, condos, medical research facilities, medical office buildings, who knows. But it's something to be watched. I don't think it's an immediate concern, but I think it's something we have to keep an eye on. I'd be much more concerned if I lived in Walpole and Foxborough about what the potential is. So. And other than that, let's see.
You going to any Medfield High School football games?
I'd like to. They should. We'll see how they do. They'll see if they can keep up with the Patriots.
Or you can go to the soccer games with me.
Soccer games, yes, that's right. You don't have, you have your grandson on
My grandson on the team, but all 6 of my kids played sports. So I think we had at least one kid on every team in Medfield High School, but it was fun. So the sports are really big in our family. So it's just part of what we do is go to the games, and it's wonderful to go and see the kids. And I think it's good for the kids to see older people go. Not that you're an older people, but I am. But it isn't just 40-year-olds.
I are too.
You are too?
Yes, I would say to people, I'm not getting old, I am old.
But I look forward to the fall seasons, I really do. The football and the soccer, it's really, really big.
Fall's the nicest time of year, really. Weather-wise, I think it's the nicest. The only bad parts of you know what's coming, and the days are getting shorter.
But you hear the band playing, and I love the band coming on. And the band is fantastic. And they're really good.
And the night air is wonderful for sleeping. Even like the last few nights we've had have been great. So. But regardless of what happens, we have to grin and bear it.
We will.
So, well, if we survived 3 winters ago, I guess we can survive just about anything. So
anything else to add, Mike?
I don't think so. I think I pretty well talked myself out for, if you think of anything else, shoot, but I think I've pretty well covered the projects going on. And as soon as we get off, I'll say, oh, I should have mentioned that. So.
Well, we'll ask you back in next month.
Okay.
And you can make a list of what you forgot.
Is that a promise?
Well, if you behave, you'll come back. Well, thanks you people at home. Thank you for watching Medfield TV. I hope you enjoyed talking to Mike. If you ever have any ideas of questions that you'd like him to address next time, either call me or call Mike or send me an email at annmedfield@verizon.net, and we'll make sure he gets the questions answered like he did with the few I threw at him before we came today, so he knew what was going on. But I think it's good to have some good questions and see what people are interested in. So keep tuned in and keep watching Medfield TV, and I hope you will. Thanks for watching.
You're watching Medfield TV, community show.